Welcome back everyone to Board Game Breakdown. I'm Chris Solomon here with a brand new video on a brand new game, and this time we are looking at the sequel to the ever popular Scythe, and it is called Expeditions from Stonemaier Games. So real quick before we get started, if you're looking for a slightly shorter video, maybe around 4 minutes, where you can just kind of get the high-level view of what Expeditions is all about, go click on this link here for our burst video, and again it's about 4 minutes and we'll give you a quick overview of what Expeditions brings to the table. But if you want to stick around with us here, then we will do a full setup on the multiplayer game, as well as a small gameplay section where we look at all the turns and how all actions work in the game. So Expeditions is quite a bit different from Scythe. There's no combat. It's more a card-driven engine building game. So you'll be setting out these location tiles that are double-sided, and you'll be exploring these different tiles throughout the game, flipping them over and gaining new benefits from them. Each player is going to have one of these 5 mechs down here. You can see they're really cool, really detailed, as we've come to expect from Stonemaier Games products. You'll be moving these around the board, and then you'll be basically building a hand of cards. Here they have quest cards and some starter characters and meteorite cards, some other things that we'll get into, and you'll be building a hand and then playing those cards to kind of build up an engine. And what you're trying to do, much like in the original Scythe, is place star tokens that are called glory tokens on different goals as you meet them throughout the game. So before we go any further, please subscribe to the channel here so you can get caught up on all the new videos that come out. Please go check us out on our website at boardgamebreakdown.com. We do a lot of written reviews there, as well as links to all of the other content that we have. We're also on Instagram and Mastodon. If you'd like to jump over there and check us out, chat with us, comment, talk to us, whatever you want to do, we'd love to hear from you. So without any further ado, let's jump right into Expeditions. Alright, welcome to the setup of Scythe Expeditions. So we're first going to just get the main board set up, and just a heads up that the board is going to be a little tall this way, so the top part might get cut off a bit, but I think you're going to understand what's going on. It's not that big of a deal. And then when we play the whole like a turn and I show you the actions, I'll try to see if I can fit everything in the screen. But to start out, you're going to have your base camp tile or whatever board. It's two-sided, but it's the same on each side. So we'll put that out down at the bottom. And one thing I want to get a little close in here for is you're going to be using this diagram a lot to set up the game here at the beginning. So when I mention this diagram, that's what I'm talking about, is up here on the top right hand corner. So we're going to put this here like that. Get that in focus. And then before we actually set up the tiles, there's a couple other things you want to grab. So there's a tray here in the container where you're going to have your map tokens, your coins, and all your workers. So I really like this because you can just be like, boom, and it's out and ready to go. And you don't even need to separate those things. The other side over here, you can take your giant deck of cards. This has meteorite cards, it has quests, it has items, but they can all just be jumbled together and shuffled up and stuck over here on the side. So we'll do like that. So that is done. Let's go ahead and grab out our location tiles. So you'll see by this little map here that there's 3 different types. There's green, S for south, brown, C for central, blue, N for north. So these are split up into 3 different piles, and you'll see here that they match with the cardinal direction, or I guess central is not a cardinal direction, but the direction that matches with that, as well as the color. So for the south, you're going to shuffle them up, and then you're going to place them out, matching this little diagram here, but they are going to be face up. So we'll just throw those out here like that, making sure to match the diagram, and boom. All right, so we will move on and we will do the central the same way and the north, and we'll start building it that way. The only difference is the central, which are like this, brown, and the north like this, are going to stay face down. They are not going to get flipped over like these, and a map token is going to get placed on each one of them. So if you'd like, here I'll put on some music real quick, boom, and you can watch me quickly go through the setup of this. All right, so we are done with that task. Hopefully you enjoyed that little montage there. So you will see that we have these 5 empty spots here, and according to our diagram, there needs to be a flipped over card. So whenever you see this yellow kind of cattywampus, I want to say catty corner, but any sort of card that is turned slightly askew means it is going to be a face up card. So I'm just going to shuffle a little bit of these up, and then we're going to take them and we're going to place them out like so. So these are going to be referred to as the face up cards. So we'll put those like that. And then the only other thing you need to have ready is your bag here of corruption tokens. And the corruption tokens look like this. So they have different 3 through maybe 8 on them, and they are both orange and teal, which are the power and guile colors in this game. But you'll throw them all in the bag and mix them up. But there is one large 20 here that you'll want to take out, and like you could just set it there, set it off to the side somewhere. You'll take your other bag of corruption and place it there. So that is how the game board looks ready to go. That is Siberia that we will be exploring during expeditions. So now let's jump over and see what you need to set up for each individual player and their player mat. So let's look at what you need to have set up on the individual player side. So we're going to set this up just what you need for one person, but you would replicate this for as many people as you have playing. So first you're going to need to draw a mech mat. So here are the different mech mats. I'm going to lay them all out and tell you the mech names. So you have Tatanka, like that. We have Odin's Wrath. We have Lumberjack. We have Highlander, and then we have Marsh Strider. So typically I just flip these over like that, shuffle them up, and then dealing out to each player. You also see that if you haven't played this before, you can put these little riser stickers on here, and because you're going to be like sliding cards underneath. But honestly, my experience with those has been it's not helped whatsoever. So if you don't feel like using those, because the middle section where you've got to like put the cards kind of like still bows down like that, so you still can't get a card up underneath there. So just to let you know what those are in case you see those. So you would deal out the mats to each person, and then you would get your mech that goes with it. So I'll show you each mech because they're pretty awesome. So here's Tatanka right here. I think I'm pronouncing that right, so we'll throw him on there. Here's Odin's Wrath. It kind of looks like a Viking ship of some sort, but with mech legs. It's interesting. We got Lumberjack here. Obviously, he's probably cutting down some trees. We got Highlander. And then lastly, we got Marsh Strider. It's kind of like a weird insect looking thing. So you would deal those out, choose which mech or draw the mech that you want from the pile for each person. So for this little playthrough or whatever, we'll just be lumberjack. So I'm going to move these guys out of the way. We'll leave lumberjack out here so you can see what goes on those. So the mechs are really awesome. They're a lot more detailed than the original Scythe mechs. Not that those mechs were bad at all, but they also come in gray. So maybe you could have an easier time painting them up if you are that type of gamer who likes doing the paint. But speaking of gray, how do you know which color you're going to be? And how do you know what color you are out on the map? So they have instead given you these awesome little bases, and I just chunked half of them across the table. There's a red one now way over there. It's kind of off camera. But you would choose which base color you wanted. So for this little playthrough, I'll do blue. So we would take our mech and we just pop him right in that base. Boom, like that. So now we know he is the blue player. So there's a couple different blue things that you need to get. So you have your blue action cube, which is just straight up a cube. And you're going to place that on that little refresh button there, which we'll talk about in a minute. You're also going to get 4 glory tokens. These are very similar to the tokens that you have in the original Scythe, but this time you only have 4, so you get your 4 there. And then this meter that runs up the left side of the card, you need to get a power token, which is in the orange that Fenris used. If you ever played that campaign expansion, Rise of Fenris, you got the little orange there. And then you have a Guile token, which is in the teal that mimics Vesna from that same expansion. So a couple call outs there to earlier Scythe products. So you would each grab one of those. And then lastly, you would need to figure out which character you're going to be. So there's a deck of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters here. Some of them we know from earlier, like Anna here. We also, I mentioned Vesna, she's here again, Gunter. So there's a few people, and then there's some, at least new to me, like Matthew and Akiko. Maybe she's from Invaders from Afar, but maybe not, I don't know. So you would deal these out, and we will play with Vesna. All right, so you would see a number up here, that's number 4. So I would need to find her companion. So you would grab the other 6 cards, which are right here, and these are all the matching companions, and we would find the one that matches. So there's number 4, and that is Voltan, which if you played Rise of Fenris, you'd remember him. So that would go over here. So these are your starting cards, and they go on the left side of your mat. Any character cards or companion cards that are not used could get put away. And then if you want, you could give out 2 informational cards there for each person. But basically that is it. That is all that you need to get the game started from an individual player mat. So we've gone over how you set up the big board. We've gone over how to put each player's pieces out. And now we will get into how each action works and how a turn works in Scythe Expeditions. All right, so let's jump right into how the actions and the turns work here. So I am not going to go through every little icon or symbol that you're going to see. That's why they give you these handy player aids like this and a rule book. But I do want to touch on some of the high points and how a turn works. So you saw during the player mat setup, which I've moved over here, that we're going to put our action cube on this spot called refresh. So when you first start the game, and any other time that you take a refresh action, which we'll talk about in a second, you're going to take your cube and you're going to slide it over to this spot here, and you're going to follow these arrows. And it shows 3 different actions: move, play, and gather. So actually, bring this up a little bit so you can see move, play, and gather. So after a refresh or at the beginning of the game, you are able to do all three of those actions on a turn, and you can do them in any order that you want. So we're just going to start from the left side and move that way, and we're going to discuss each of these in turn. So first you have move, which that is probably the easiest one to understand. I'll put my tokens back out here and my mech. So the move action is just how you're going to move your mech across Siberia. At the beginning, your mech does start on this base camp, so when it moves, it can touch either this, this, or this, so these three are adjacent. But each move, you're going to be able to move 1 to 3 spots, unless you have some sort of card or special ability that helps change that or alter that, then that's going to be your standard mode. So I could say, well, I want to pick up a yellow, or this again is one of the face-up cards, so I could say 1, 2. I could go there and be ready for that spot. I could also do 1, 2, 3 over there. I could even go to one of these face down spots. So that brings up our first rule of moving, is that if you touch one of the face down spots, so 1, 2, 3, you would have to immediately stop. You grab the map token to keep, and then you flip this over. Now we're going to talk about the corruption here in just 1 second, but just know that the first rule of moving is when you go to one of these face downs, I couldn't say 1, 2, 3 and go over there. As soon as I hit a face down spot, I need to stop. The only other rule that you really need to be aware of is when you have other mechs out there. So let's pretend this guy was right there at the beginning. I could not say 1, 2 and land on his same spot. Unlike Scythe, there's no combat or anything in this one, so you would not be able to do that. Now I can move through it, so I could, if that one was available, I say 1, 2, 3, and I could land there, but you just can't land on the same spot. So let's remember that. We'll put this other guy away. And then if you do flip over a central or a northern tile, you'll see a little dotted line around the second benefit. So you'll see right here, there's like a dotted square, and that is going to be the case for every one of the central and northern tiles. There will be a second benefit, and you're going to grab your trusty corruption bag, and you're going to draw corruption out and place them on that spot until it reaches the number or above that was right there. So that's 5 plus. Some of them are 8 plus, but I'll grab this out. So that was a 3. You do need to keep them in the order that you pull them out on. And a 4, so 3 plus 4 is 7. That is over the 5, so we would stop there. So we'll talk about how we get rid of that corruption later. And you can throw him back on there. So that is how a move works. Remember, 1 to 3 spots. Stop at any area that is uncovered. Take the map token, flip it over, put the corruption on it. You can move through other players or the automa, but you cannot stop on that spot. All right, so next up, play. So the play action is going to have to do with your cards. Now this is a little spot of contention. It seems to be on message boards and stuff, but let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. Everything on your left side of your mat is what's in your hand, okay? You're never actually going to pick these up and put them in your hand. That has upset a lot of people that they use that terminology when you keep them on the table. But just remember that the left side is basically what you have to play, and it's in your hand. And when you play something, you're going to move it to the right side. And you're going to put them out in a row, which is called your active row, because it doesn't matter which order that you play them in. Now, obviously, I don't have a ton of room here, but that's okay because I'm not going to play a ton of cards. But you would be able to put them here and here and here and here in front of you, so that everyone is aware of what you've played. So when you play a card, there's a couple things to look at. One is really any card you you can pick up from your left side and play it on your right side. Now that doesn't mean that everything is going to be usable on the card, but some things are. So let's just look at Vesna. And right off the bat, when you play her, you're going to score the primary resource up there. So that is a guile. So when I played her, I would be able to move my guile up 1 down there. Right below that, you'll see that once you get 1 glory token or 2 glory tokens out on the board, you're going to be able to get additional resources every time you play her. So you'll just want to keep track of those and make sure they're there. Now, if you have a worker, which are these guys over here, you will see that she can get a blue worker, and you can place it there and gain a face-up item or solve. And we're going to talk about solve in a second. But we can put her back, and let's look at Voltan real quick. So he would be able to get you a power, and then down at the bottom, if you had a red worker, you could activate any adjacent face-up card, or you can vanquish, which vanquish I will also discuss when we talk about solving. So we are going to pretend that originally, let's say, we had moved there. Somehow we used the gather, which we haven't gone over, and we got a blue worker. But when we play Vesna, we could put her over here. We would get our guile, which we already got, and we could say, hey, I want to use my blue worker and activate this ability, and I can gain a face-up item. Now items, well, first, face-up items are all the face-up cards, are all these cards out there. Items are going to be any card with this little gear. So we have item cards, we have quest cards that have a heart, and we have meteorite cards, which there aren't any on the table currently, but they have their own little logo, which I'll show you shortly. But her ability, because I placed a worker, I could gain an item, so I'll just gain this item. When you gain a card, it does go into your active row, so you do not get to put it over here and immediately play it. It's going to go out here, and then somebody needs to grab another card. And speaking of meteorites, here's a meteorite card, so it says meteorite, and it has this little emblem. We'll go back in that empty spot. So that was my play. I moved a card over here. I got her power. I used a worker to activate her ability, which was to grab this. Now, how would I have normally got that worker? Okay, so the third is gather, and gather has to do with what is on these location tiles. So when I went to this location tile in my little example there, I would use the gather function to take either a blue worker or a yellow worker. And when you take a worker, they just go sit out on your mat. You could go here and get a green or a red. You go here to get a face-up item. So you'll see that there's benefits on each of the cards, and you're going to use that gather ability there to pick those up. So this turn, we've kind of already taken it, but let's go back and quickly show what I could have done. We're going to pretend that I never went there. I just wanted you to see how that worked. But in this situation, I could have said, okay, move, play, gather. Well, I'm going to move first, so 1, 2. I'm going to gather and get my blue worker. And I'm going to play a card, get my guile, use my worker, grab a face-up card, which would have been this one. So that was my 3 things, and at that point, my turn would be over, and it would go to the next person. Now, on subsequent turns, you're going to again follow these arrows, but this time you're going to move your cube up and you're going to block one of them, and you're only going to take the other 2. So maybe I want to move and gather, so I would put the block there in the middle there, so I'm blocking play, and I could now say, well, I'm going to move 1, 2, and I'm going to gather, which is grabbing a card. So maybe I want to grab this one, put it in my row, replace it, and then I do not play because I have blocked it. Okay, and it would be the next player's turn. When it comes back to me, maybe I want to move and play. So I could move and I could play Voltan, get a power. If I had a red worker, do what that is, and move on. So at some point you'll see that eventually most of your cards are going to end up on this right side, and you won't have anything else to play. You might have lost all your workers as far as putting them on a card, so what do? That's when we go to refresh. So you would move this back to that starting area that said refresh. And on this turn, you would take everything that's over here. Workers go back to your mat, and all the cards get picked up and they go back to the left side, ready to be played again. So on that one turn, you just basically refreshed everything. Now it's the next player's turn, and when it gets back to you, you get to go back to that spot and you get to do all three. So refresh is a way to get everything from here to there to basically refresh your hand. And then on your subsequent turn, you're going to get to do all three things again. After that turn, again, you're going to move the block up and take 2 actions, and it will just keep going on and on and on like that until the game ends. So hopefully that explains pretty much how a turn or your rounds work. So let's now go back and look at a few specific things when it comes to play and when it comes to gather. So you don't really need to move that, but I will. But let's talk about the solve and vanquish. So there are 2 important skills, and each character, the main characters, have this or solve. Okay, and solving has to do with taking quests that you have and successfully turning them in and solving them. Okay, so there's not ever going to be a spot you go to on the board that allows you to solve. You have to play a card that's going to allow you to solve it. Now you might get items or other cards that allow you to solve things. So look out for that. It's not like Vesna's the only one that's going to allow me to do that. But I just wanted it to be clear that you're never going to go to a location and gather the ability to solve. That needs to be solely on a card. So how do we solve? Well, first let's look at a quest. So here's what a quest card looks like, and it has a heart on it. So you'll see that it gives you a primary resource. It also gives you an ability. So there might be times when you can't solve a quest, but you still want to be able to play it. So you could take this from your left side, put it on your right side, gain that, and if you had a purple worker, do this. So you could treat it just like a normal card. But at some point, you're going to want to solve it because solving quests is going to get you points at the end of the game, which we'll discuss in a minute. But you're going to really focus on what's going on over here. So one, you have to have your mech in a certain location. And you'll see that here, 15, and then that tells you north. So somewhere up there on those north locations, there will be a number, 15. So you'll see down here on the south, these have numbers in the right-hand corner. That central only turned over is 11. So this one you would need to eventually explore, or your opponent explore and flip over, and you would need to get to the 15th location. You would also need to be able to turn in 3 power. So we're going to just pretend like we have all this stuff. So you would play Vesna. You would use a blue worker. You'd say, I'm now going to solve. I would have to have this card. I could have it in this row or over here. It doesn't matter. But it'd say I'm solving this row. And I'd say my mech's on 15 north. Well, we'll pretend that it is. I'm going to pay 3 power. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to get whatever is underneath this little arrow. So this means I could draw any face-up card that's on the table and also get an additional coin. So I would do those things. Take a card, take a coin, which is points in the game, and then I'm going to take my quest and I'm going to place it like this. And at that point, any quest that I have, I could trigger and get the additional resource. So if I had 3 quests done, I would get to trigger all of them. So that is going to be solve. Again, remember that you have to have a card that allows you to solve something. You're never going to find that out on the locations. I'm going to give myself some more power here just to make sure I can show you the next thing. I'm going to give myself a red worker so you see. But alternatively, you're going to also be able to vanquish when you play cards. So Volton here and all the companions have this or vanquish action. And that has to do with getting rid of this corruption. So I'm going to put my mech back over there, and if it was my turn to play, I could say, hey, I have enough power to vanquish that top token of 4 because I have 4 power over here. So I could place him. Again, you'd probably want to do it in a row like this if you had more room. I would gain my power, so we'll do that. And I would say, I'm going to play my red worker and I'm going to vanquish. And because I'm on this location, I'm going to pay 4 power. Boom. And I'm going to take this one off. And you would actually put this with your stuff because it's going to be points at the end of the game. And now underneath, I have unveiled 3. If I had no more power, then that would be the vanquish turn. That would stay there for someone or myself to vanquish at another time. But we're going to pretend that I had 3. So you can vanquish as many tokens on that spot as you can this turn, as long as you have the power or guile to do so. So I'm going to say, well, I'm going to pay my 3, and I'm going to get rid of this. So I vanquished 2 corruption tokens in 1 turn. It's now unveiled that additional spot here. And if we look at Voltan's ability again, it says if the vanquish removes the location's final corruption, I can go ahead and gain that revealed benefit. So I could do that benefit and it kind of chains it together. So again, there are other cards, there are other items, things that allow you to vanquish, but your companion is going to allow you to vanquish and get that added benefit. And just like solve, you're not going to find any vanquish locations. You have to be able to play a card to solve and vanquish. All right, so there are other things on the cards when you play them, but for the most part, they're pretty self-explanatory. So I think with that information, play is pretty self-explanatory. So let's jump over to gather, and we're going to look at 3 gather abilities that you really need to know about. So the first one we're going to talk about is right here, which we're already on, and it's that little wrench. So that is called upgrade, and it's when you have an item and you want to upgrade that item, or upgrade your mech with that item. So much like a quest card, an item card is going to be able to just be played like normal. You're going to be able to play it from your left to your right side, and get this. When you play it on your right side, you're going to immediately gain or do whatever this little top part says. And then if you play a worker, you're going to do what this says. So it's much like a normal card, but when you take the upgrade ability. So I go there and I say I'm going to gather that upgrade ability. I can then take this, and much like the quest, I'm going to slide it under there so that this little text is out, still being able to be shown. And now that is basically active whenever I'm playing. So that text says, whenever you have 10 times power, you may decrease your power to 3 to gain $3. So every time I get up to 10, maybe I don't really need the power, maybe I've already vanquished a lot, I could drop that to 3 and I could get $3. And I could do that every single time, and that would be active for the rest of the game. There's also an amount of money here, which this says $2, and at the end of the game, that's going to be some extra points for you. So you're going to put those out like that. All right. Lastly, as far as your board here goes, you have one more side, and that's for meteorites. So this is a meteorite card, so I'll grab that because we're going to look at that in a second. And I need to find a meld, is what the action is. That's a boast, which we want in a second. Okay, there's a meld. So let's look at that. The meld, much like the upgrade, has a little dotted line around it, and it's like a meteor with an arrow. Okay, so my mech is there. I take the gather function. I can now meld a meteorite. So if I have a meteorite card, probably getting tired of this, but up here you have the resource you're going to get when you play it. You have a ability down here that you are going to trigger if you use a worker. Kind of like how the characters get added benefits when you start getting glory. Meteorites are going to get stronger if you have already other meteorites melded. But what does it mean to meld something? Well, you're going to take this card. Once you've used this gather ability, you're going to turn it sideways and you're going to slide it up under here. And now this says gain $1 per quest you control. So if I had any quest on my left side or right side, I would get $1 for each of those. Much like the quest, if I meld another meteorite here, it's going to trigger all the meld abilities, just like when we solve another quest, it's going to trigger all the resources. So you've seen where on the board you're going to gather either that upgrade location to put items here. You're going to gather this meteorite location or meld to put meteorites here. You're going to play the solve function to put quests here. You're going to play the vanquish ability to start getting these. Okay, so what does all that add up to? Well, hopefully it will start adding up to these categories down here where you're going to want to place a star. All right, but to do that, you have to use the boast benefit. So unlike Scythe, where as soon as you got one of those, you would just throw out a star, on this game, you are going to have to get your mech to a spot with a boast ability, which is that star, and you're going to use your gather action to use that boast. And at that point, you're able to take a star and put it out on one of the categories that you have got the right stuff for. So let's talk about what each of these does. So you have here, I'm going to actually slide this forward. So this is for anyone who gets 4 quests. So there is a maximum of 4 quests, 4 items, and 4 meteorites. So once you have those, you can get a star here, here, or here. This is for this big 20. So at some point in the northern tile that takes this is going to get flipped over, and the person who vanquishes this, and they have to have 10 power and 10 guile, they're going to be able to take that glory token. This is for anyone who has 7 different glory tokens, so it doesn't matter what they add up to, but you need 7 separate ones. This is for someone who has 8 cards under control. So that is on the left side or right side, 8 cards. It does not count these, so you might want to get that early on in the game before you start melding or solving. And then this is for either getting 7 workers or 5 map tokens for exploring. So those are your different categories. People can share those, so I can get 4 quests done. My opponent can later get 4 quests done. It doesn't get blocked or anything. But once the first person puts their 4th glory token on there, it does trigger the end of the game. The opponent or the other opponents take one more turn, and then the person who placed it gets one final turn. So whoever does get the 4th glory on here, they are rewarded with a slightly increased amount of goes, so they might be able to grab or get some extra points there at the very end. So then you want to count up the points, and that is nicely arranged down here. So first, everyone would just count up their coins that they've gotten from different things. Then they move to the right here, and for each of your stars, you're going to get a different amount of points depending on how many quests that you have correctly solved. So if you think, or if you've played the normal Scythe game, as your popularity rises, each of your locations that you own, things like that, go up in money. This is the same way. As you increase your quest solved, your stars are going to cost more money or be worth more money. You're also going to get coins for all your items you've upgraded, which are down here. And then everyone's going to get 2 points for each corruption token, so these, and even the 20 is still only worth 2 points. So everyone will count up those tokens and or coins and see who wins. And basically, that's the end of the game. So it's quite a bit different from Scythe. Again, there's not a ton of interaction. There's definitely no combat, but you will be be able to stop people from getting to locations that they want to get to by being on them. You'll also be kind of working together to unveil these as you beat corruption. So maybe I know that my opponent needs to meld something, and these were covering this up, but they don't have any power. I might not want to run over there and just zap those power, because then that's going to unveil that, and they're going to be able to go use it. and so maybe I want to wait until I have a meteorite to meld to do that. Each mech down here has a individual variable player power that will impact how you can play. The characters are slightly different. There is a ton of cards, all with different abilities and things, awesome artwork. So you can really have a different game every time you play. Obviously, the setup changes every time. I mean, the central tiles are always in the middle, and north are always on top, but where they're going to be and how they're going to get unveiled is going to be different. So it really adds a lot of variety to the game as you play. Games take about, I'd say 45 minutes maybe, once you are skilled enough to kind of understand what's going on. There's a really nice solo mode too, where you can play against the Autonoma using a deck of cards that's pretty... if you've played any other Stonemaier games, you'll definitely recognize the way it's set up. I'm not going to go into that here on this video. Maybe if enough people want to see the solo mode, I'll do a separate video for that and we'll play a couple of rounds. But thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy Expeditions. It's a wonderful game from a wonderful company. Please make sure to subscribe, and that way you can get notifications on any new videos that we have coming out. Make sure to check out our website, boardgamebreakdown.com, where we have plenty of written reviews and links to our other videos. You can find us on Instagram and Mastodon. So again, thanks for checking us out, and I'll see you next time.